Welcome to the Behavioral Profit, the podcast where we decide the human side of the business growth. I'm your host, Debbie Longo, executive behavioral coach. And each week we dive into the mindset shifts, leadership strategies, and cultural behaviors that drive higher performance and greater profits. Whether you're leading a team or building a business, this is your space to learn how human behavior fuels business success. Today's guest is Tatiana Teppoeva, PhD, a certified nonverbal communication expert, personality profiler, and the founder of One Nonverbal Ecosystem, with a PhD in economics, a master's in data science from Harvard, and 2 decades of leadership experience at Boeing and Microsoft. Tatiana brings a rare blend of behavioral science and business strategy. She now helps B2B leaders, sales teams, and founders elevate executive presence, close high value deals faster, and lead with emotional authority using advanced profiling, body language and decoding, and AI informed insights. Get ready to think how you show up because Tatiana's work goes beyond words. Good afternoon, Tatiana. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Debbie. Very honored to be here and very excited to share insights with you and your audience.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So there's a few questions and they're divided into topics. Okay. So we will get right into this. The nonverbal ecosystem, why silent signals dictate 50 to 93% of your impact. What is the nonverbal ecosystem and how does it shift communication?
Thank you for your question, Debbie. So there are multiple studies that tell us that nonverbal represents a huge percentage. And there are debates how much it is, and people sometimes um, argue with each other about the numbers. And I actually recently posted YouTube video about that. Most known study is from 1967 from Albert Mehrabian, when he found that our emotional communication is up to 93%. Of nonverbal, and only 7% to words. Another study by Ray Birdwhistle says that words account only for 30-35%. There is another study about nonverbal being around 80-85%. And some people argue that if it's technical presentation, then it's not so much and things like that. But I demonstrated even on my YouTube that even in technical presentation, nonverbal can play a huge role. But for simplicity and to avoid arguments, I like to use 50-50. So about a half of our presence is what we say and about a half of how we do it. So one nonverbal ecosystem consists of nonverbal piece of it, and I include the personality profiling so we can tailor our communication. We understand ourselves and we understand someone who we communicate with well, so we can have personalized experience which makes it better for both sides. And also nonverbal piece, and a nonverbal piece actually consists of 9 different categories. It's body language, it's eye contact, gestures, it's how we dress, and other things. So it's a multi-component thing. So this is what I'm covering in my one nonverbal ecosystem.
Very nice. Thank you for that. The next question is which invisible signal sabotages leaders most often?
For this, I would say three main things, and all of them are related to mismatches. So one I would highlight, it's a mismatch between what we say and how we show it. So for example, if I say, hello everyone, I'm so confident and I'm happy to share with you today. Do you feel a mismatch? And sometimes it may not be obvious, but feel like some subtle cues and differences. Or another time, my lovely one, I love you so much. Yeah, the opposite. So it can go different ways, but when it's mismatch, when we try to send one message but express it differently, and I tried to
Mhm.
exaggerate to the extent I could in my box here, but I hope you got the idea. So this is the first mismatch between the message and how we show up. The second one is when we address personality the way we would like to be addressed. So, for example, if we have a driven person, goal oriented, who does everything fast, let's go, let's do it. And this person is communicating to someone who is anxious, slow, takes its time, his or her time to analyze things, to have a plan B and plan C, and this person will start like, okay, let's go, let's decide now, move on. Then the distance will become wider and wider between them because they will not be talking on the same grounds. They have different ideas about lives, different motivations, fears, etc. So it's very important to see who is in front of us and tailor our messaging to the person. And of course, knowing profiling is great, but even if you don't know, you can observe the person and see how they behave, how they communicate, and maybe you can adjust here and there from perception, whatever you've gathered from looking at them, observing them. And it's important both at work and in our relationship, everywhere where we communicate with each other. And the third mismatch that I would like to highlight is when our action and intention don't match what we actually do. So, for example, I would say, Debbie, how are you? How was your day and how was your vacation? And I'm doing something else, right? And you feel like, is Tatiana interested in what she's asking, or she's just uh, doing like check marks, right? And this is what I often see in sales teams that I work with. They have a script, they need to go through, this is done, this is done, this is done, and they don't engage. They don't engage, they don't follow up with their clarifying questions, they don't show sincere interest. So it's very surface like. And then they get surprised, like why this client walked away, why they didn't sign up, and they don't realize that the way they showed their disinterest, maybe not intentionally, maybe they have some other things to think about, kids, problems at work, whatever they may have, but they were not engaged. And this potential buyer, they didn't feel connected. They didn't feel that there was interest to provide them product or services, and they walked away. So those three mismatches are main culprits, I would say.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So there are a few things that I would like to reiterate and touch on. And, there's a statistic that your body language and your first impression, right? When I meet somebody for the first time, that is about 5% of their personality. And we think a lot of times that that's how the person is. That's how they really are. And to me, that's judging. Okay, because I make an observation, a distinction right away. Okay. And you gave those examples there, right, with your body language, right? So I want to go further, right, with the person. Also, maybe we're talking about business here, right? Maybe they want to hire an employee. Okay. Now, that employee has to make a really good impression in 20 minutes or a half hour, right? That interview is because the person who's interviewing doesn't know that person, right? So there are situations where, they really do have to, and they do have coaches for this specific thing, right? To get them like for like a job interview, specifically for that, right? So they can really present themselves properly, because with that type of thing, one wrong move or one expression that does not fit that job, or that the business owner that's interviewing them is not going to be receptive to, one expression that is going to ruin the whole entire thing. Okay. And that business owner will say, I have to move on. I can't hire this person. And that's how important it is, right? But if I wanna, so this is interesting, the nonverbal ecosystem, right? That you were talking about, okay? Because if I wanna create a relationship with my employees, and I wanna, expand my business, and I wanna make goals, so I could, increase sales and profits. I want to do all these things not by judging, right? And by saying, this is the way that the person is, right? So, in a way, to me, of nonverbal, right, is important, in a lot of situations, okay? Because like the examples, and what you were talking about was that um if I learn those types of things, right? How to be nonverbal in a professional way, in a way that is going to suit my needs, whatever they are, right? Then, and this starts with the business owner or the executive, then not only are the employees going to follow, right? But they're going to see that business owner in a completely different light. Because to me, a lot of times that's more valuable than the things that they say. Okay. Because you ever hear of actions speak louder than words? Okay.
not, not only actions but also our nonverbal, because as we talked with you, right, someone can be saying one thing but showing completely different thing with the nonverbal, and you read it, whether we want it or not, we read it. If we can explain it or not is another question. And I wanted to add to your statistics that usually we have numbers say up to 5 minutes to make this first impression. So 5 seconds, sorry. So only 5 seconds we make overall impression, and after that it changes a little bit, but not too much, even though we don't know person very well. And sometimes it happens in life, like, oh, I didn't know this person was so deep and great, right? And sometimes we feel like, oh, this person was so great, we saw him or her first time, and then we saw that this person is actually very shallow. So this happens, but not as often as our comprehension of them in the first 5 seconds. So it's very important. And I want to add to your very valuable point about connection. So we are not talking about faking or creating some kind of power pose to impress someone artificially. This is to connect. And if, like you said, the manager would like to understand their employees better, so it works for both sides. Employees feel heard, they work better. Manager has more influence and feels that they can rely on their employees, and there are more to that. And all it takes just to observe the employees, because some people, some particular personality types will not tell you much about their personal life or concerns they have. But if you ask them some questions, and even if they don't answer openly, but you watch their body language, what they are doing at the moment, right? If they cover their mouth, face, that will tell us some cues about that they are not completely confident in what this manager is saying, or they have concerns about this topic. You can ask other questions. You can create some discussions, maybe some meetings about something. So be more observant and try from different sides. And when you find this key to your employee, the whole thing changes. And we know that majority of employees leave companies not because of the companies, but because of the managers, right? So if we address this element, then we would have fewer people leaving because of this mismatch. Yeah, so totally agree with you.
Yeah, these are all things, and these are very good things to talk about. So, the second topic is personality profiling in sales and leadership, customizing influence strategies for faster, deeper trust. How do you quickly profile a prospect in a high stakes meeting?
There are some cues that we can look at, and some people are more expressive than others, and it's also a cue. Because we have personality types that like to show up, that they're here and they're there, and others just, I'm there, but I'm on the back, I'm
Mm.
watching. If you need me, you can rely on me, I'm here. So there are different styles on how people show up, and this would be the first cue. The second one, we can look at the facial expression, and even wrinkles that we have can suggest to someone who understands how to read them what personality type it is in front of us. Another thing is gestures. Are they wide and open, or are they narrow and close to the body? Is there is a lot of adaptation signals. We all have them, but we express them differently. So this will show anxiety thing, like about particular situation or topic that we are talking about. And another thing, even to look how we appear. Are we in worn out t-shirt, or are we in a dress with big flowers and a lot of accessories and a lot of makeup? Right? It also signs of personalities. And of course, I just would like to just caution that don't judge by one thing. So we need to see a comprehensive picture of the person, because sometimes I can work with a stylist and be dressed not because I like it or because of my personality, but how they taught me to look for the occasion. So if we take just one element in isolation, we also may be judging based on how this element looks at the moment, but not the total picture. So if we look at all the elements together, and even better if we have some information prior to the event, to read what they wrote or how they showed up online or at work, if we have this information, that it will add to the story. And then we can make some assumptions, not judgment, but assumptions, and try, for example, if we communicated in the meeting, try approach for strategist, or try approach for anxious person and see how they respond. And if our approach lands with them, they understand us and they respond and react well, then we probably got it right. If not, then we can pivot based on their reaction. So this would be the main things that I would look at. And again, if you are not a profiler or nonverbal communication expert, just trust your instinct. Watch for those signs and cues and try, experiment. And with more and more practice, you will get better and better at this.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you. So, again, the thing I got out of it is, the first impression. And if I walk into a high stakes meeting, right, even if I am a reputable employee or a manager or, somebody that's higher up in the company, I still want to pay attention and I want to be like I am at the job. I don't want to act differently where I'm, really firm when I'm at the job and I'm, delegating, job duties and stuff to the employees, but then I walk into the meeting and, I act like a new employee. And I've seen that, so I want to be able to play the part because to me that's really what it is. It's like, the an executive plays his part, right? The Because it's like a role, right? He does his role, the manager does his role, the employees do their role, and everybody has a different role, a different part, right? So now I think that what I got out of what you're saying is that they need to play that same part in everything they do at that job, right? All the time, right? Now, another thing too that I was thinking of, right? Doesn't have anything to do with high stakes meeting, but something that you said in the beginning, right? I I don't wear makeup when I do these podcasts, right? Because I want people to see how I really am. Okay, because I normally don't wear makeup, right? So, like, if I wear makeup during the podcast, there people are going to think that I wear makeup all the time, right? Which is not true because normally I don't, right? Then I want to sit on a couch. So I make it look like a casual conversation, right? Like just talking, right? Like not where, because I'm the host, right? So not where I'm a business person. I'm sitting at a desk, I'm sitting in an executive chair. To me, those are things that might possibly turn somebody off, right? Because they right away, that's the impression that they're going to get. Okay. They might not listen. There's like a statistic like 2 billion people or something listen to podcasts. It's like an unbelievable statistic. Okay. But when I do this, I make clips only because, my podcasts are pretty long most of the time. And I don't want to, I'm not sure, if they're going to listen to the whole thing, right? So that's the thing. So they might put it in the middle, or something like that. So these are some things, but what I got out of what you're saying is I want to play that role. I want to make sure, that I'm giving the impression that I should be giving. Because if I don't do that, then not only is it going to create confusion, I could get fired.
Yes, and maybe if I can add a couple comments. So as far as makeup, for example, it really depends. Right now, I'm taking a mini MBA course for style because I have clients who ask for this element a lot, and I would like to provide professional help. So I'm studying it in depth. And what they say, and it's from Russia, this is where I am from, they say that not wearing makeup to the events is a bad taste. So you see, perception is very different. And if we show up without makeup in their settings, they probably say like, what are they doing here? Like, did she even wash her face or what? In other settings, it's like your perception, right? Why did she put so much makeup or whatever? So I would say that being authentic most of the time, like as much as we can, but be appropriate at the same time is very important. And the second comment I wanted to make, so you gave example from what you've seen. I've seen a lot at companies, Boeing, Microsoft, and some others I've been to, that especially females at the meetings, they say something and people don't notice. And then guy says something and everyone catches the idea. And how about another one? Person doesn't do that much outside of the meetings, but during the meetings, especially with leadership, this person is the first one to speak up on the topic, cover achievements that the team or another person did without mentioning them sometimes, and things like that. So how to deal with those challenging situations, to show up yourself when you are not the person who is a performer, right? Who is like, look at me, I'm here, and here's my results. It's a deep walk. It's very hard, and I know from myself because I don't like to speak up at every opportunity and say like, oh, this is how much I've done, things like that. So this is a skill that we need to develop. And those people who feel that they need this work, it may be a little bit harder for them, but it will be very beneficial for them at the end. And sometimes we don't realize like what specific area we need to improve on, because we can improve work and improve everything, right? But if we talk about 80-20 rule, what are those 20% of improvements that we can make in our nonverbal that would affect 80% of perceptions that people getting from us, right? So I wanted to point out this challenging problem at work as well. Very important how we show up.
Yes, that was very good. Thank you. So the next question is executive presence and emotional authority, practical routines that upgrade how leaders enter the room. What is the first behavioral blind spot you look for in C-suite client?
So going back, especially to females, I had very mentees at Microsoft before I started coaching and doing nonverbal sessions and video assessments. And what I see is that often females, but also males, undermine the authority. So they don't present themselves as well as they could. And it can be done by different forms. For example, one of those are adapters. If we constantly do something, or you are very confident you are talking about, but then you fidgeting, you move in some ways. And again, I'm trying to exaggerate a little bit because I have only that much space to show here some examples. But those subconscious cues that we will be reading from this person will undermine a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more of the authority. If we look at those TED Talks or some famous speakers, they've been with coaches and sometimes not a year or more. And CEOs of big companies, we think like, oh, how good they are. But actually, if you look at them when they started, it were completely different people. So it's a skill that you can acquire to project yourself very well. So those misalignments, mismatches that I mentioned earlier, those the ones that I'm looking for, and also the way that we don't undermine our authority ourselves.
Yes, that was very good also. I really appreciate your insight and your, the way that you phrase it and, explain it, because to me it's very easy to understand. I am the type of person, and, whether I enter a room or wherever I go, right? I have a very leadership, you know, just behavior, right? Attitude. And I show that immediately. Like here, I'm sitting on a couch, I'm talking calmly, but if you see me in person, I'm not this way, right? And I like the phrase, some people are natural born leaders. Okay. So the way that I act and not only the way I talk, but the impression that I make, right? Whether it's a first impression or whether I start talking, okay? Even if it's nonverbal too, it in any aspect, right? Um, People can tell that immediately that I'm a leader and that, I can take control and I could run a business. I could do this and that. And many people have told me that, right? And that's why they wanted me to start my own business and everything, which I was doing, you know. But I was in management my whole life, and I manage retail stores, and I did it on my own. So, basically, so, that's just how it was then. And I had no problems at all, because of the way that I act, right? And the way that I behave. But the first impression, was and very, very important too, right? How I enter the room, just like
But
we were talking about.
But let me ask you, so you probably strategist, and I have other assumptions, but also don't want to judge from very short period of time. But
Fine.
what would you say? Do you have a challenge of not showing too pushy, or not showing overbearing, over leading, and being on the softer side? Maybe for you, because you're on the couch and without makeup and trying to present yourself in more casual way,
Right.
those are your kind of things around to soften this
Right.
leadership side of you, right? So
Yeah.
your personality type is the
Yeah.
leadership. Go get it.
Yeah.
But you have challenges maybe to adjusting on another end of it. And
Right.
other people who are very good on the soft side, they have challenges with leadership, with
Right.
how to show up.
Yeah, I think that if I'm talking to one person, it's not as bad. But if I'm in a room, because I've done this before, I've done public speaking, right? If I'm in a room, and I did it when I worked, if I'm in a room with a group of people or even just a few people, right? I project that leadership and that very strong, uh, not really behavior, well, behavior, but also, first impression, right? I do that automatically. I don't even think about it. And I like that. It's like I want to do more of that. I
It's
don't
good
want to
because we
be,
can.
just calm.
It's great when whatever we would like to have, we have, right? This is a personality type that you've been born with. So we have
Right.
main personality type that we are born with, and then the ones that we acquire through our life. And sometimes we have a third one additional based on life circumstances. So it's great when person is aligned with their personality type, but sometimes environment, very, for example, if I'm a shy person, but I need to stand up at the meetings, I need to show up, it's hard work for me because I need to change myself, right? Or if you're a leader position in a big company and then you come home and you need to be soft and not being like, I will tell you where everything is, right, with your kids, spouses, or other relatives, then there could be another challenge with it. So we need to adjust to the occasion and situation where we are. And some of us very successful at this, and some learning and trying. But again, this skill is learnable, so we can train it and get better and better, at least if we want. If we don't, if everything is good, then there is nothing to add.
Yeah, that's very true. Thank you. So, next topic, gendered leadership patterns, when gender dynamics matter and when they don't. Do women leaders need a different playbook or just different emphasis? Do you tailor coaching for women in leadership?
I do, and I tailor it actually to each person based on the goals that they pursue, challenges that they observe, or maybe they heard feedback from other people, like you shared with me, right? That people notice, people tell you, and they've been telling you for a long time. So the same with all individuals. But if we talk on female leadership, specifically, then definitely. And I mentioned earlier that I noticed and I heard from females that they underestimate themselves and skills. So I interviewed over 100 people at Microsoft for data science positions where I was there. And I interviewed males, females, project managers, data scientists, engineers, software developers, different roles. So it's not just one. And in 80% of the time, females undercut themselves. They think they need to have 120% of what is required in job description to even qualify. And male candidates, they have 60% and they think that they're good enough, that requirements are too high, like it's not realistic. And when you talk with them, and I had, as mentioned, I had mentees at Microsoft, I tell them like, you are so good. You need to go and talk more about what you can, ask for more difficult projects, etc., etc. So the same when I work with nonverbal, I look for the things that our people already possess, because everyone has good things already in them, and how they can leverage them to their advantage. I open their eyes and say, like, do more of this, look at this, how it's great. And when we do video assessment, we both see, I show them how great it is, and they feel even better in their own eyes. They look at themselves differently. And things that we need to improve, I try to look at 80-20 rule and adjust those 20% of what will give 80% of the impact of the perception. And then if they want to continue working more, then we can do more, but at least 20%. And for females, it's mostly about confidence and how they show up. When for males, it can be adopters being too pushy, being too forward, being too much into there, where they can push people away. So those two, it's not completely 50-50 or black and white. It's a mix, but those are main trends that I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's good. So, did you ever hear the expression, it's a man's world?
Yes, and it's changing, hopefully changing, but yes, depending on what time we live in and what culture, right? It all affects us. Fortunately, unfortunately, we not much we can do. And by the way, for your audience, I prepared free guide where they can see main things that they can watch for to already start working on the nonverbal and improve impression that they make.
Yeah, that's very good. So, just quickly, I think a woman is just as qualified for any job that a man does, if not more qualified. But it might be different in Russia, but in the United States, to me, women have always been in the minority. And that's why we say it's a man's world because, we just want men, to do everything. But when a woman really becomes a big leader, then they see that a woman can do it. But a lot of times women have to be twice as good
This is what I
than the
wanted to
man.
add.
They have to be twice as smart than the man. They have to perform better. So everything they do, they really have to be on their game a lot more. So therefore, if they really make it, right, and they really are better than the man, then you know that they're really smart. That's really the bottom line because there is no way that they are going to be equal to the man and be able to get that, that position, that job, just as an example, right? And there's just in my view just the way that I see the way America is, and I've coached people like this, so I know from my own experience.
Totally agree. And the same, if not worse, in Russia. It's you need to be twice as good to prove your point. That's why these impressions that we make, perceptions that we create, is very important. Because if we don't do it well, it's how much harder we need to work. It's 4 times or whatever, right? So it's very important.
Very good. Thank you. So, next topic, AI informed human intuition, where AI enhances real time behavioral decisions. Where does AI amplify, not replace your work?
So with growing AI industry, there are tools that are going into conversational AI, personalization email, HR preparation, like how we hire people or how we even read interviews when they try to identify patterns based on the video of the interview and things like that. But AI is still not there. It cannot read in context very well yet. It cannot read all the cues. It misinterprets things. So we need to be careful about that. But as a baseline, if needed, if I work, for example, with big quantities of phone calls or something like that, established baseline, they help. But there are many issues with AI tools. Recently, I I think about 15 email tools for personalization. And I thought like, oh, it will take me so long to analyze each of them and try and pay whatever the monthly fee is. I was surprised when like half of them just didn't work. Like there are either buttons didn't work or something was wrong on the website itself. Then another portion of them just gave promises 8 times better personalization, something like that. But what they did actually is just getting personalization, with hello, and there is a name putting in the brackets and some other information in the brackets, and this is where it ended. So not honestly much personalization. Another portion of tools was about scraping online space and inserting some information from there, but it can be creepy because if we email our prospect like, oh, I saw you attended this event with your son, I think it was cool. Like, and then this prospect thinks like, what? How do you know this information? Are you following me? Are you watching me? Like, I don't want you to know this information about me and my son, right? So it can be creepy. And if we use AI to communicate this way and then we talk with this person, do we really remember what AI talked about? The person at that end would remember because it details about their life. We can ask AI to summarize it for us, but the problem that the person on another end will not be talking in summaries. They can ask us, how about that event that I went with my son that you mentioned? You said that you would go to, did you go? And you like, what event? AI didn't give me this information in the summary. What event? I don't know. And if we talk this way with our prospects and they like after a few times realize like who was writing me those emails, it's not about personalization, it's about breaking trust. And right now, many companies already have AI filters, and all AI generated emails, personalized emails, get filtered out. But there are a few tools that can be useful that I can use. Some of them we need to be very careful from security perspective. So, for example, one of companies with great idea but created offshores. It's under U.S. jurisdictions for operations, but we don't know, like, what if something happens, right? They claim that they already have 2 billion emails, and to use their services you need to give them access to all emails, so inbound and outbound are already existing, so they can grow with learning experience and have a bigger database of everything and to be able to help us. So just imagine if there is a breach, and recently there was 16 billion password breach in big companies. So if even big companies can be in problem like that, what can we talk about our emails? And I ask chat gpt, just give me 20 scenarios how this information can be misused, and chat gpt gave me 20. I'm sure it would give me 100, but 20 were so realistic. So if we get this information, those phone calls, video calls, emails that we have, maybe amounts that we are discussing, services that we are discussing, maybe customers, clients share information outside even the topic of the agreement, we expose potentially a lot of information. So we need to be very careful who we give access to, and be very mindful who we are signing up for. But there are some good tools and they're improving. So hopefully there would be more of them, but I'm concerned about security.
Yeah, so thank you for that. There's a lot of things going on with AI, and I'm sure we could talk for a very long time about it. And the things that you mentioned were very basic, but I don't use AI, and there's really no reason for me to use it in my business. And uh, AI cannot replace our behavior, it can't replace our personality, the way that we talk. And to me, that's one of the reasons why the podcast is so valuable, right? because we had this whole conversation, right? And as far as I know, we didn't use AI, okay? Because it was just, a nice podcast that we had, right? So this is the thing. So, it's a fine line, but if somebody just spends their whole career, writing emails, or something, or doesn't talk, or, doesn't converse with anybody or whatever, they just sit in a cubicle, then maybe it's good for them, but as far as I know, a lot of times it can be a hindrance, and it depends on the industry and stuff that you're in, but it's very controversial. That's really the thing. So the last topic and the last question is action toolkit for listeners. First steps to read a room, diffuse tension, and close high value deals. What is one exercise a listener can try this week to boost executive presence?
I will give two, if it's okay.
Sure.
So one is to record meeting, interview, or whatever this person has, and watch it without sound, and then with sound, and think about like what impression am I making on my audience and how I like it, or maybe there are some pieces that I don't. If you cannot see anything, you can ask someone you trust, maybe some relative or some co-worker, um, friend, and ask their impression. Also do it without sound and with sound, so they only can observe nonverbal and then can observe both. You can also try like, do even without nonverbal, just the words, the sound, but tone is also part of nonverbal ecosystem. So this would be one very valuable. We don't look at ourselves that much. It would be super beneficial. Another exercise would be great, that if you have some goal, like I would like to be this confident person, and I know that I have some internal limiting beliefs or some roadblocks or whatever it may be. Imagine that you don't have any of those. You don't. What just if it was your perfect, your North Star, and record yourself. It doesn't have to be in real life somewhere at the meeting if you don't feel confident doing it. You can just do it with yourself. Just go in this state of mind, feel that you are that person, and record yourself giving speech or doing some actions, and compare this to your previous recordings from the meetings or whatever. And in most cases, you will see the difference, that how you showed up here as the person who you wanted to be would be much closer to your North Star, if not completely there, than the one that you are in reality. And it would be the sign, finding this difference and working on that. And the beauty of nonverbal, that it works both ways. So inside transformation shows up on our external, on nonverbal, how we portray ourselves. But it also works the opposite way. So if we start being more open, showing more power, right? Doing things that we don't do, but we should more. Then internal also changes. So it works both ways. So addressing it from both perspectives would be the best. And of course, some people more inclined to internal work, and others inclined to external work more. But the balance of both, I think, is the best.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Um, I like what you said, and you gave some really good suggestions and insight. Um, if I were just to take one thing away, one thing out of the last question that you said, and the key thing for me is toolkit, okay? Because I want to point the finger. It's you, you're the problem, it's your fault. And I don't really want to look at myself because that takes too much time, and that's too much of a problem. And I can't be bothered with that. Right. So, what I do is that's really what I do. I help people with their behavior, whether it's changing their behavior, looking at themselves, maybe they have an issue or something they want to work on, something like that, right? And so everything that you said was very important to me because I have people on this podcast in all different industries, and I'm trying to get a very broad range. That's why the podcast is so general. I'm not focusing on one thing where most podcasts, right? They focus on one thing, right? Here's the script, here's the questions, right? But I don't do that because I want to be able to send a message and maybe try to contact the person that's in the industry of what we're talking about. Okay. In every podcast, I want to do that. So hopefully I will. Of course, I'm not going to be get somebody in every industry in every podcast, right? But it'll happen a little bit, eventually here and there, and that's one of the reasons why I do it. I mean, there are other reasons too. Okay, but that is the reason as far as, what we're talking about here. Okay. So I want to be prepared and I want to have a plan, right? I want to have a toolkit, right? For whatever it is. And to me, that's the most important thing. And if I just wing it and say, okay, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and I don't really know what's going to happen, right? I'm just speculating, right? Or it doesn't matter to me, then, I might be, wind up in a worse situation than I am now. I might not be, okay, but I don't want to take that chance. Do I want to, do I want to play that card? Do I want to take that gamble? I don't want to. So, I want to make sure that I take the action and use the toolkit and make a plan and have a coach help me with that, or a mentor or somebody in the field, right? Because to me, the way that I coach, it doesn't matter what field you're in. I do something completely different, than what most coaches do. And this is, another reason why I have the podcast. So, this is all very good things.
Let me
So,
let me just add, I
sure.
totally agree. Working with expert not only gives you professional opinion, it shortcuts your path to success so much. I myself got into nonverbal not because it was a dream from early ages, but I was good at getting interviews, getting jobs, and selling things, and so something worked very well. But I felt in some nuances it was missing, but I couldn't identify myself what exactly it was. And this led me to go into nonverbal, into profiling, learning more and more, and now style and all of those things. And I learned from experts so much that I wouldn't have read from the videos that I would record because I'm not this expert. I wasn't at that time. So it's super important to seek help, and you will shortcut it so much. And I see it from the people who come to me that they tried this, they tried that, and something else, and they're still there. So, but at least recording themselves and noticing that they are not where they are and maybe tweaking a little bit, it's first step in realizing that there is some room for improvement. And because we talked with you that behavior, nonverbal, all of that, it's a huge part of perceptions that we create on people and how we show up in this world in different circumstances. I totally agree. It's super important to work with experts who can help and accelerate your progress so much.
Yes, thank you very much. That was important. So, if you want to start applying this today, Tatiana created a free guide called Five High Stakes Signals to Master for Executive Presence. It's based on real coaching breakthroughs and available at, I'll put the link in the description. It's a great primer to what I teach in more depth. How can listeners with you or bring this kind of coaching into their team? Last question.
Say it again, please. I
How
need.
can listeners with you or bring this kind of coaching into their teams?
So they can contact me. They can sign up. There's my website that they can contact me. They can find me on LinkedIn, searching for my name, Tatiana Teppoeva. I also have YouTube channel. So I work with individuals and with teams. So thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for being on the show. I have the links here and, I'll put everything in the description and, it will be clear if you want to get in touch with Tatiana, and I also have links that I'm going to put on my shows also. So, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Debbie. It was a pleasure to be here and discuss such an important topic. And thank you for all the listeners. I hope that your impression will be great.
Thank you.